We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email john@nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Supermac and Gibbo on a Thursday, and here they are. Hi, lads.
Hi, Steve. Boys? Hi, John.
Hi,
good to see you, lads, and as always, plenty to talk about in the next hour with regards to Newcastle United. 2 games to catch up on, actually, John. The first one, of course, West Ham, 70 minutes of dross and dire football and a 3-1 deficit for Newcastle, then becomes 20 minutes of joy. Weirdly as well, the goal scoring times significant because they were exactly the same as a similar game that Alan Shearer played in against Leicester. Newcastle 3-1 down, beat West Ham 4-3. And of course, Newcastle had done the same against Leicester with an Alan Shearer hat-trick in exactly the same minutes scored. Spooky that, but what a comeback that was, John.
I mean, unbelievable. What a horror it was before then to be 3-1 down. I mean, I was sitting there with Malcolm and we were absolutely stunned because we got off to the best possible start with a goal within 2 minutes. And I don't know what it is with Newcastle. I mean, if you take that and the Everton game that followed it, we need to get a run of winning games to make Europe, and we don't seem able to do that. We get a win and then we trip up on our shoelaces and then we win again. And how convincing was West Ham? Well, it was sensational to watch, and it was wonderful and it was heartwarming and didn't turn out to be a nice day. But for 70 minutes, as you said, Steve, it was awful. And then we do the opposite against Everton. We play quite well, but don't stick our chances away. And then we imploded to death with the most ludicrous penalty that you could ever see. What the hell Paul Dummett was doing? Rugby tackling a bloke that was nowhere near the ball. The ball was passing over their heads straight into the gloves of Dubrovka, and he's got Young on the floor. So really we self-destruct, and we don't look like putting a run together. The West Ham turned out to be terrific. It was ludicrous also, because, I mean, people were going down like 9 pins. I mean, Almiron come on as a sub and then was subbed off injured. Kraft come on as a sub and was subbed off, although not injured. And the other injuries, we now learn that, Almiron and Livramento are out for a month. They don't get injured for a couple of games. They're out for a month. They're not going to play again till May. And they just went down in that West Ham game relatively innocuously, and now they're out for a month. Trippier, who was perhaps going to play against West Ham, didn't, was perhaps going to play against Everton, didn't. He's now not going to play against Fulham and not going to play against Spurs. Well, I mean, you look at the minute I got the team against Everton and I looked at the bench, I knew we're in trouble because we had 4 kids plus 2 goalkeepers plus 2 old age pensioners, Dummett and Ritchie. And that was our bench. There was only Willock because of all the injuries. And you knew that people like Barnes and Hall and Anderson, all of whom I thought played terrific. But we knew they hadn't 90 minutes in them because they've hardly played. We knew their legs would go. And sure enough, when the legs went, we didn't have the backup to look after it. I mean, what I did, lads, was I looked at who wasn't a bit. I was so fed up with it, and I felt actually sorry for them looking at the bench we had out against Everton and knowing that those 3 lads wouldn't be able to do 90 minutes. Barnes stayed on 90 minutes, but he didn't play for 90 minutes. He blew up. I had a look at who wasn't available to us that night, and listen to this as a quality team. Pope in goal, back four of Trippier, Lascelles, Botman and Livramento. Middle 3 of Tonali, Miley and Joe Linton. And a front 3 of Almiron, Wilson and Gordon with Target as backup. That's a good team. That's a good team, and none of them were available. I mean, can you believe it? I mean, that is a top quality team. That would hold its own in the Premier League easy. That team, and they were all not available. And now we're told that Almiron and Livramento won't play again till May.
Yeah,
and
John, that all Premier League clubs have to put a squad of 25 to the Premier League. What happens if you've got more than half of those injured? Can you bring more into the squad?
No, you can only
bring just limited to the 25.
No, you can only bring in academy players, Malcolm. All your academy players, like for example against Everton, Alex Murphy and Parkinson and White.
So it's 25 plus academy players.
Sorry?
It's 25 plus academy
players. Yes. Right. Okay. But you can't bring in any more seniors.
No.
You've got to put all your kids. Therefore, that's how on the bench we had all those kids, and we had 2 goalkeepers because we did put in 4 keepers, as everybody does. So we had Carrius and Gillespie, plus those 4 kids, and plus the old age pensioners, Dummett and Ritchie. And now the only one on the bench who would normally get into the starting 11 plus 9 backup was Willock. And the only way that is going to change at Fulham is that we'll have 1 more player available because Gordon's back after his 1-match suspension. Yes. But none of the injured players are back. So if Gordon comes in for Gillespie, he'll come into the team, and then somebody will drop out, either Barnes or Murphy, probably Barnes to be the impact sub. One of them drops to the bench, and that's the only change on the bench, is that whoever drops out the first team for Gordon goes onto the bench. But we're going to have all those kids on the bench again, and Dummett and Ritchie and whatever. And again, the bench, the only options we really have on the bench will be Willock and one of the wide players. And that's all we'll have at Fulham.
Where does that stand, John, before I come to Malcolm about the West Ham game? Where does that stand for you in terms of comebacks that you've witnessed at St James's Park?
The 4-3.
Because we saw that Leicester game, of course, where Shearer got the hat-trick. We, of course, had that wonderful Arsenal game, 4-0 down.
I was going to say, the one that really stirred me at the time was Arsenal 4-0 down at half-time, 4-4.
Yeah.
But the difference here was we actually won this one. We got a draw the other one, but we actually won this one. I mean, it was quite incredible. I mean, it really was. And like the Arsenal 4-4 that I was, when you first get your second goal back, you're 3-1, you get back to 3-2, you still don't think you're going to win it. You think, well, we're going to get some respectability out of this. And then all of a sudden, once the game started off from that, you knew you were going to win it, didn't you? And I thought Harvey Barnes was sensational. His equaliser was a wonderful ball for him from Isaac, I think it was. Wonderful goal from, and then the belter that won the game. I mean, that deserved to win any game. That long range effort that went in, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, fabulous, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But and again, he started off bright as a button against Everton. Great ball for Isaac's early goal. But of course, in the second half, he disappeared because he hadn't the legs. And there's exactly the same thing happened with Hall, and exactly the same thing happened with Anderson. And I thought first half, Hall and Anderson were terrific as well. I thought they played great, but that we couldn't just keep it going. The one thing out of all this upsy downy, I mean, I don't know where I am. I've got no idea where Newcastle are. I've got no idea whatsoever, because what we need to do is consistency. And I think I'm going to send them all a dictionary so they can look up the meaning of the word, because we don't know how to be consistent. We're just not consistent. And it's, I mean, the one person that is consistent, I suppose, at the moment is Isaac. I did an article in the Chronicle about 3 weeks ago when we were saying, look, you're on 16 goals. Newcastle haven't had a bloke score 20 goals in a season since Alan Shearer in 2004. And funny enough, I then went on to talk about all Shearer's goals and all Malcolm's goals, where every season Malcolm scored in it. I mean, we had 5 seasons where Malcolm was all top scorer, and he always got in the 20s and twice got in the 30s. But we haven't in recent times had anybody like this. And he had 16 with 10 games to go, Isaac. There's now 8 games to go, but he's got 19. So he's going to make the 20 all right.
Yeah,
And he is consistent. And you know what? He's not just consistent scoring, his assists. I mean, the assist he gave for Barnes to make it 3-3, the assist he gave for Byrne to score against Everton, he was fractionally offside. It must have been the hairs on his legs, like Malcolm said on his debut at Liverpool. It must have been one of them to be off. But it was a wonderful ball. He's inventive. He can play. He's got great feet. He is the one that's giving me hope at the moment. And of course, so will Gordon coming back. But we're struggling. We're struggling with injuries. And as I say, when you name that team, Malcolm, that I just named, that 11 that weren't available to us, it was a good teammate, wasn't
it? Yeah, wasn't it just? And it's quite frightening to think that that Newcastle, they're going out beating West Ham, who were above them, two or three places above them, and it's literally with a reserve side.
Yeah.
It
By the way, you know what you always say, Malcolm, that we're good against the good teams and we're not against the bad teams. Well, West Ham were above us, so that makes them in the good teams.
Everton way below.
Everton set a record. They've gone 13 games without a Premier League victory, and that is the worst record ever in the Premier League since the Premier League was formed. And they did it against Newcastle. Yet against Everton, we got 1 point out of 6. We lost at Everton and drew at home. 1 point out of 6. Now that's like the returns we've got against Luton, Nottingham Forest up here, Bournemouth. We play the poor sides and we're hopeless. We don't win. We play the good sides. We've beaten Arsenal. We've beaten Manchester City. We've beaten Manchester United. We've beaten Paris Saint-Germain. But we can't beat the teams at the bottom. So I look at the rest of the fixtures and I don't know what's going to happen. I've got no idea what's going to happen.
Just on the Everton game, one, I thought that Isaac's goal was absolutely brilliant. His footwork was supreme. It was fantastic, and for me, I would be quite happy to nominate it for the goal of the season. I thought it was that special. But going back to the West Ham game, I couldn't believe at times just how poorly we were playing. The passing was absolutely dreadful. The amount that we gave it away, and we go into the Everton game, and it all looked so rosy then, and we went a goal up, but and I keep saying this all the while. I've always said it. The most important goal is the second goal. At 1-0, the other side are always thinking they're in with a chance. Come on, we just need one goal, and we've saved things. And Everton, they kept plugging away. I didn't think that they were in any way dangerous whatsoever, and for it to finish with the kind of goal that was ultimately Newcastle's downfall in the end, it was the most ridiculous penalty I've ever seen given away. I think it looked like Dummett was super glued to Ashley Young. What on earth was he doing, holding on to him and dragging him to the ground? And the most incredible thing beyond that was the fact that the referee didn't give it. VAR had to talk to him in his ear and say, "Oi, you better go and have a look at the screen, pal." And he's gone over and immediately given the penalty.
Malcolm, I don't know what you think, but what struck me about the penalty was first and foremost, there was absolutely no danger on Young. The ball was played badly over the head, straight into the gloves of the keeper. No danger, Malcolm. And by the way, if we'd put Alex Murphy on or a kid on, and the kid had done that, you would have said a rush of blood, panicking because he's inexperienced. This was a hugely experienced fullback, a Welsh international, hugely experienced fullback, does something like that. And to compound it, Malcolm, and I'll ask you this because you're a centre forward that scored loads of goals and took penalties. I thought the penalty was poorly struck. It was almost saved.
It wasn't a good one. Dubravka was unfortunate because he got his hand to it.
He went the right way. It struck him halfway on his arm and shot up into the top of the net. It was this guy hadn't scored since Adrian built the wall here. Yeah, and he scores with a very poor. It was the sort of shot that is made by a centre forward that hasn't scored in his last 19 Premier League goals. Imagine a centre forward not scoring for 19 Premier League games, and he took the penalty as if he hadn't scored for that long. And with 2 minutes to go, I know we've got another 9 minutes if added on time, but with 2 minutes to go, that was a killer. And to give it away like that, and then the penalty be taken so poorly, was awful.
Yeah, and I really, for the life of me, I just don't understand how Dummett could have reacted in that fashion as the attack built up. Ashley Young, he's a wise guy in the way that he goes about his game, and he knows what he's doing. But for Dummett to fall for it, as you say, very experienced player. If it was a kid, then you could maybe understand it. But I can't with Dummett, and it's and I've always said he might not be a great footballer. He's a great defender. He reminded me. He's always reminded me very much of Frank Clark, who was one of the best defenders that I've ever played with, and certainly never a crowd favourite was Frank. And Paul Dummett reminds me of very much of Frank. But how and why he got caught in that fashion, I really can't understand it. It was almost like he was superglued around Ashley Young. And then, of course, Ashley Young, he just needs to put a bit of pressure in it. And it gave the view to the referee that he was just being hauled to the ground. What was done? Oh, but also, what I have to say, because having given that penalty, you say to the defender, well, just don't do it for heaven's sake. That's the manager's line. Just don't do it. Don't be so stupid. But at the same time, during that game, Newcastle could have had numerous penalties if you watched what was happening to Dan Burn. The defender that was marking him was absolutely outrageous, grabbing him. hitting him, holding him. It was going on all the while. I could see that Dan Burn was getting frustrated, and he kept his temper very, very well. But nevertheless, I think that generally in the game, because we see so much of it, and I think it really does spoil the game at set pieces inside penalty areas, the way that defenders are grabbing forwards and holding on to them. That referees should be instructed, if you see that happen, you give a penalty, and that there's no there's no way of sort of letting them off, which I think referees are doing at the moment. And some of the antics that take place in penalty areas at set pieces, I find quite embarrassing, quite ludicrously embarrassing. And it's time for the officials to stamp on it and make the game better. But coming back to Dummett, this might sound a bit extreme, but it's one of those situations that a manager sees it and thinks, we can't afford that, and so you're thinking, well, that's somebody on the transfer list for the end of season. We can't afford to be giving stuff like that away. It's tough enough playing the game, but what happened with Dummett, I don't know. Maybe he can explain it, but it looked as if that he was actually having a forced dance with Ashley Young until they fell over.
Malcolm, do you think his lack of pitch time? I mean, when did he last start a Premier League game? It must be about 2 years ago since he actually started one. I mean,
when he started, yeah. If that, John, it might be more.
Yeah. You think, is it the fact that he's never, because him and Richie just sit on the bench, warming the bench. If they come on for 3 minutes at the end of a game every 6 weeks, that's all they do. And all of a sudden in a pressure game, if you go on, are you suddenly not confident in yourself, your own ability, because you're never getting any minutes, and you think, I've got to take care of this. If I hold on to him and he doesn't get away, then they don't score. Because if they do score, and it's my man that scores, then you drop an even bigger clanger. And by the way, and you've obviously agreed, Malcolm, because you said the referee actually had to go to VAR. There's absolutely no question it was a penalty.
Oh, no question.
No question.
No question. No. But what concerned me about the whole situation was that Dummett, in holding on to Ashley in the way that Ashley Young, as he did, his eyes were closed. And that concerns me. A defender in the penalty area, when there's a cross coming in, should never have his eyes closed. And it was almost as if he was having a fit in holding Ashley Young as he did. But his eyes were closed through the whole thing.
That
really did concern me.
Was incredible. It was either an absolute wrestling match, or the two of them were going to have to get married.
Yeah,
because it was a loving cuddling each other. I mean, what on earth was it all about? It really was bad, and for it to be so costly, because Newcastle, after an hour, should have been out of sight. Yes, they didn't have the legs after that, but they should have been out of sight, because Everton carried no threat at all.
No, they didn't. They didn't, John. And they weren't looking to stretch the defence in any way. People weren't running on the ball. There were no through balls coming, and I found that they were looking a very poor side, and what really annoyed me was that Everton, looking as poor as they were, and they didn't look good at the back either. But we never scored that vital second goal.
They've got
if we got that goal, we would have just killed Everton right off. They would have just heads down and just looked to play out the time and get home.
They've got 4 points out of 6 against us, Malcolm, this season.
I know 3-0 they won at their place.
You know, if you're going to go into Europe, you can't give Everton 4 points out of 6. You can't let Forest win at St James's Park. You can't let Luton get a 4-4 draw at St James's Park.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it is crazy.
Sure, Luton were 4-2 up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it was another fight back.
Mm-hmm. What did you make of Dan Burn, lads, at centre-half?
Well, my answer to that quick one is that I thought he was terrific. I thought he was huge heart. And you know what? You know why he was terrific? Because he was playing in his own position. That's why.
Yeah.
He's not a left back. I mean, he must have been thrilled to bits to be playing there, because he must have turned round and said to himself, well, at least I'm on home territory. I'm on my territory. I'm doing the job that I was born to do, because I wasn't born to play left back. I mean, you've only got to look at him to know he's not a left back and to know he's a centre half, because he's the only fella that can dust the face of Lord Grey on top of Grey's monument. He's that tall. There's no left backs that size. Look at Trippier on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he's not. And I thought he was great, but I thought he was great because you know what you're going to get when he's sent off. You're going to get honest to goodness, huge effort. You're going to get sweat on the forehead. You're going to not see him exposed so often for pace because he has players around him, because he's playing in the centre. Yes, he's going to get done for pace on occasions, but when you're exposed on a wing, you're going to get done for pace regularly. And I think he has benefited enormously by coming into the centre-half position. And I'm not worried about him playing centre-half alongside Shaw for the 8 games running. Of course, we've got to buy a centre-half in the summer with Lascelles and Botman out till Christmas, but we're going to buy a centre-half anyway. The problem is with Trippier out and with Livramento out, and that, how do we operate at full-back? Now, Hall looks as if he's got the ability to do a job for us.
I thought he did all right on last night.
Yeah, but what it poses, Malcolm, and I know we're going over old ground here, but what it poses for me is, considering that he did all right, considering he played about 11 or 12 first-team games for Chelsea last season, and considering he's been completely fit when half our team have been unfit, how the heck has it taken till now for him to start games in the Premier League? He's been available for Yonks.
Yes, but Livramento has played on the other side.
Sure, but he's a left back. Not that's supposed to be his position.
Sure, but
and we are supposed to think he's worth 28 million, Malcolm.
I know. Yeah.
The worry, Kraft, Malcolm. I don't know what you. Emil Kraft for me is just what he is. He's just an average
player. Not good enough.
No. Put subtly, you're absolutely right. He hasn't got the pace. He can't overlap well. I mean, the Swedish international sides must be limited if he's their regular right back.
Oh, they're having a dreadful time, the Swedes.
No wonder.
And if Kraft has no competition at right back,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is just, he's honest to goodness, but, he's not a Newcastle United right back. But, of course, we've got 2 good ones in Trippier and Livramento. Unfortunately, they're both walking wounded along with everybody else. We've got a better army that's not playing than the one that is playing.
Sure. Yeah, I just wonder with Hall, because he played a lot of the time with Chelsea as a left-sided midfield player.
He did. That was his initial position, and then he was moved to left back.
Yeah, and he did very well in that position. But we've got Gordon, we've got Barnes.
Oh yeah, he's not going to get in there
to occupy that position, so he's never going to make
but
it.
We
there.
bought it. We signed him as a left back.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe it's the thing that what they did with Joe Linton, they can do with Lewis Hall.
Yeah, but the way in which Howe has ignored him, it just screams to me that Howe just doesn't reckon him, doesn't fancy him, has doubts about him, didn't want him signed in the first place even. So who was responsible for that?
Let's see what he does for the next 8 games, because he must start the majority of them, because you've got Livramento out for a month. You've got Byrne not available to play left back because he's got to play centre half because Botman's out and Lascelles is out. So you've only got Target that could possibly come back and play for Hall, and I think Hall's is good and potentially better than Target.
Sure. Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. Yes, he doesn't get caught pace-wise and on the turn like Target does. Target's pace is very, very limited indeed. And
I think
it's one of those where right-sided players say, right, I want to get at him, and managers will be saying, right, feed him the ball and what have you. So Target's always going to be under pressure in the Premier League.
Target's going to be a target. I'm wondering about your thoughts about Anderson, because I thought he's reminded us, he's only 21. I thought he reminded us that he is a good player that has got vision,
Yes. Absolutely he has.
He's brought a bit of energy, Malcolm, to the side, hasn't he? He's brought energy to the side.
Yeah, and considering how long he's been out for, well done him. I thought he was absolutely terrific against Everton. It just concerned me that at 1-0 up that we weren't threatening the Everton goal that much, and I was disappointed in that. We desperately needed that second goal. That would have killed Everton off. But whilst it remained at 1-0, Everton were always going to just keep having a little go at the whole situation. 2-0 would have killed them. It very frustrating. I've found these last 2 games very frustrating. West Ham for the first.
I found 2024 frustrating, Malcolm. Most of the good results, Steve. Most of the good results happened this season happened in 2023, when we beat Arsenal, when we beat Man United, when we beat Man City, when we beat Paris Saint-Germain. It all happened in 2023. The only good result eye-catching result in 2024 was the win at Aston Villa. When we got that terrific win at Aston Villa. That was the rest has been predictable and on some occasions sad.
Yeah. Sure. But and if we had beaten Everton, we would have gone above West Ham into 7th place, and that's the final place for Europe, isn't it? I think.
Well, if you think, Malcolm, if we took 3 points at home to Forest, if we took 2 extra points against Luton, that's 5. 2 extra against Bournemouth here, that's 7, and 2 extra against Everton, that's 9. Where would we be with 9 extra points? And they were all available to us because the opposition was either moderate or poor. 9 points blown. That's a big lot.
And this division is such, you can't afford it. You cannot afford it whatsoever. And the lack of those points costs you dearly. I should be absolutely furious if we don't make Europe. We are in danger of not getting there.
But I tell you what, Steve, I'll ask you as a fan, but from the inside. I mean, I'm thinking of all our fans. Do you honestly believe with 8 games to go we are going to make Europe?
It's a flip of the coin, John. On current form, no. Do Newcastle deserve to be in Europe? The answer to that question is they do if they win the games and win the points that gets them there. But on current form, I can't see them doing it. We're losing too many home games and we're dropping too many points at home, and our away record hasn't been great this season either. So, in a word, I think we'll finish just outside the European places, lads. I said a couple of weeks ago the season was over, as did quite a few people on social media. Eddie Howe took umbrage at that. The season's not over. We've still got plenty to play for. We're going to give it a good go. That's worked in previous seasons where there's been a kick up the backside and us against them kind of mentality. But I don't think there's anything other to blame now than this injury list and an insistence on playing players who perhaps should have been given a bit of time out. I think Sean Longstaff, if he is playing injured or playing currently with injections still, I don't think that's going to be doing him any good. But I certainly don't think his confidence is being boosted because he's not playing well. He's not been playing well at all.
No. I grant you on that, Steve. But what else do you do?
I know. Promote a youngster, perhaps.
Yeah.
Do you play somebody just because they're a good name, because they're a good grafter, because they do the yards? But when he's not playing well and his confidence, he can't be happy with the way that he's playing. He can't be happy.
I mean, you look at our midfield, for example, Chris, Steve, taking the points you've just made there. Bruno, I thought, was terrific again against Everton, and he's carried the midfield to a certain extent recently. But Joe Willock, since he come back, looks as if he's way off the pace and way off what he can do. So
he played well in one game, and then he's gone
He did, Malcolm. He did. You're absolutely right. He had the one game. Mm. But you look, now, I don't think even Eddie could dispute the fact that Longstaff and Willock get on the team sheet because of their names, not because of their performances, because they've got the big-time reputation. Well, Anderson's come to be able to help that. Miley had a long run, but he's out. Oh, supposed to be some good news. Miley will play before the end of the season. Before the end of the season, we need people now. You know, that's the trouble. That's the trouble. And I thought, will it come on? And you know what? It was the only supposedly impact sub we had against Everton. The only senior sub we had, not the old man like Dominic and Richie, but senior sub in his prime, and he did nothing when he come on. I thought he did nothing. He didn't help the situation. He wasn't an impact sub, and we needed an impact sub. And there's only going to be him again at Fulham, and whoever goes out of the team for Gordon, which will probably be Harvey Barnes as an impact sub. Now he can be an impact sub, but you need more than one. Now, you know, if we get an injury at the back, are we not better off I'm talking about with 20 minutes to go, a quarter of an hour to go. Are we not better off giving Alex Murphy a go? The Irish kid, 19, got a lot about him, etc. Supposed to be one for the future. If it's midfield, is Joe White? We brought him back from Crew, and I know we're going League One, League Two here. We're not going top of the range, but you've got a lot of league experience at that level. Is he not worth a little 10 minutes, quarter of an hour? Because you know what we'll do again. You know what we'll do at Fulham, because the same thing's going to happen at Fulham. We're going to play okay. We're going to get the 60 or 70 minutes, and Hall's going to have to come off, or Anderson's going to have to come off. And what do we do then? You can bet your boots that the first people we turn to after Willock and Harvey Barnes will be Dominic and Richie. Well, why? Why not Alex Murphy and Joe White, for example? You know, because they can't do any worse or have less impact late in the game. I'm not suggesting for one moment we should start with them, but I don't think we need to start with them because we're starting 11. I thought against Everton, we're starting 11 looked good on paper, but we knew what was going to happen. the three guys were going to blow up. And when they did blow up, we only had a 1-goal lead and we couldn't hang on to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, crazy. Okay, we are slightly over halfway through the show. Time for some ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Go to their website, skipsandbins.com. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Go to their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. Go to their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com or phone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. They're a local company from Morpeth, and there are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. Big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button under the video. Click the thumb up to like the video and click share to share to your social media. If you want to help the channel financially, you can pay a one-off £25 fee. You get a cup, a scarf, a pen and a membership card and entry into the NUFC Matters monthly draw. Email john@nufcmatters.com for more details, or if you've got a smartphone, scan the QR code now and it takes you straight to the membership pack. We also support the food bank on this channel. Go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and you'll find the matchday bucket. You can make a donation virtually today. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify and other podcast providers. We also do events during the year. NUFC Matters Live will be at the O2 City Hall on Friday the 2nd of August for an evening with Rob Lee, one night in Antwerp. Tickets start at £15 and you can get them from ticketmaster.co.uk. An evening with the entertainers takes place on Friday the 24th of January 2025 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House in Newcastle. Telephone 0844 249 1000 or visit the website tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk to buy tickets today. You can also catch me on the North East Footy Breakfast Show live on Toon Radio weekdays 7 till 9 a.m. on DAB, smart speakers and the toonuk.com. And don't forget, Supermac and Gibbo are part of this wonderful end-of-season party, 20th of July at the Tyneside Irish Centre, 5 o'clock start, live Q&A with John and Malcolm. Ask George will also be on stage. We're going to have Bev Reid there from the Dementia Matters charity, who it's in aid of, and the Long Sands will be providing the music. Tickets available now from newcastlelegends.com, priced at a tenner. With all the ticket money going towards Dementia Matters. Looking forward to that. And there's an event with Peter Beardsley as well in June. Tickets available £19 now on voucher, or go to newcastlelegends.com and buy your tickets on there. So plenty to look forward to over the course of the next couple of months.
Steve, I've got one that is...
yes, give it a mention again, mate. Go on.
Yeah. It's... I'm spending an evening with Chris Cross, the tremendous comedian and magician, and it's taking place at the Gibbside Hotel, Front Street in Wickham, and the doors open at 6:30. This is Tuesday, the 23rd of April. The following evening, we play Crystal Palace away. Tickets are £10 a head, and they can be obtained on the internet. At 3ws.chris-cross.co.uk. It'd be a super night. He is a very, very funny fellow, is Chris.
Yeah, should be a great night.
Can he magic us 3 points at Fulham, mate? That would do us the world of good.
John, that's a wonderful segue. What a wonderful segue that was, John. A Malcolm McDonald derby. Another one, Malcolm.
Yeah, it is. Yes, indeed. Well, I grew up as a lad in Fulham, and heavens above, I saw Fulham when I was 4 years of age. My first game, it was against Blackburn Rovers. And I just absolutely fell in love with the game of football, and still am right to this day, all these years later, 70 years later.
That's a good impact, mate. That is a first class impact. Well, I fell in love with football, but I then fell in love with Newcastle United as well as football.
Yeah, you do, don't you? And I supported Fulham for many years, and then for a season I was a player there. Although it was a dreadful year, not a very pleasant experience. Times were very difficult, but then had terrific times. Great 5 years as manager there, and
happy times.
Yeah, yes, they really were, and of course there's been so much work gone on at that ground. Now I still don't think that the main stand that they've built on the riverside is fully open, so it's restricted numbers, I would imagine. But I'm sure.
Second time we'll have played there this season, Mal. 2-0 FA Cup victory there earlier in the season.
And it was comfortable, wasn't it, that victory?
Yeah, it was. It was comfortable. Of course, Newcastle hoping to make it their 5th successive win on the bank of the Thames in all competitions, and the 4th in the Premier League. We had a 3-0 success, obviously, at St James's Park in December. We're bidding for our 2nd Premier League win double of the season. We've also taken 6 points off Aston Villa, of course. Anthony Gordon, as John mentioned, returns from suspension. But Kieran Trippier, Tino Livramento and Miggy Almiron have already been ruled out. To join Lascelles, Tonali, Pope, Wilson, Joe Linton, Botman and Miley, all still sidelined. And Matt Targett is the invisible man at the moment, as his availability is unclear. Fulham, well, they were beaten 3-1 at Nottingham Forest on Tuesday night. Not an ideal preparation for our game. On the home ground this season, Marco Silva's side have won 9 times. They've drawn 1 and they've lost the other 5. They've won successive games at Craven Cottage 3-0, beaten Brighton and Spurs by the same margin. 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday, so no TV for this one. Referee is Sam Allison, which is a new name at first team level as far as we're concerned. His only previous sightings in reserve games have been during 2016, which was a 2-1 away win to Brighton, and 2017, a 1-0 away win at West Brom. And Jared Gillette is on VAR. So that's all the info that you need. John, come to you first. I think for some reason, I think we'll find this maybe is a different proposition than we did in the FA Cup. I think this will be slightly tougher than we were probably expecting it to be.
I think it will be. The FA Cup was a different game completely. The interesting thing is we could theoretically have a hat-trick of wins this season against Fulham. The 2 wins we've had so far, 3-0 up here in the Premier League, 2-0 down there in the Cup. We scored 5 goals and let in no goals. Can you imagine that these days? Let in no goals. It'll be difficult to keep that going. I honestly think this will be hugely more difficult. Fulham are a complete contrast in the Premier League. At home, as you mentioned, Steve, they had 9 wins out of 15 starts. Away, only 2 wins out of 16. So the result at Forest is what happens when they're on the road. But they're different at Craven Cottage. And you know what concerns me about this game is the bench. The bench is going to be almost as poor in strength as it was against Everton. And will that catch up with us again? Because that's unquestionably what caught up with us against Everton, the lack of a bench. And incidentally, it was their bench that turned the game in their favour. The Everton bench. So Fulham will have a stronger bench than we will have. And can we see out the game? I mean, I guess we've got to go into it and try to get, in the first hour, try to get something like 2-0 up. So that, when we do have to sub some people on, we can just play nice and tight for the last quarter of an hour and come away with the victory. But if after 70 minutes or 75 minutes, it's a draw, or heaven forbid, we're a goal down. How we're going to change it? It is going to be very, very difficult. And it's the bench that worries me rather than the starting 11.
Yeah, and the bench is so important in the Premier League these days. You know, particularly once you get to about an hour, you know, then the whole game can change considerably with a number of substitutions. And I'm just hoping that that those who have come back from spells of injury that they've played enough games now to have built their fitness up so that they're going to last a full 90 minutes. That would be good.
I mean, for me, the hope, we've got to get about two up on the 70-minute mark so we can afford to bring subs on. And the biggest hope we've got, because to get 2-0 up, you've got to have good attackers. You've got to keep the back door locked with good attackers. And my big hope is that Isak, with Gordon back, can make some impression on them, because they're two quality players in the final third.
Yeah. And do you think he'll play Gordon on the right, Barnes on the left?
Well, that's the interesting thing. I suppose it depends on how exhausted Barnes is after the shift he put in, because he had to stay on the pitch for 90 minutes, and he's hardly played this season.
Yes.
And he had to stay on the pitch for 90 minutes. He didn't get off like Anderson and Hall did. And it depends. I mean, on form, yes, I would play Gordon right and Barnes left. If Barnes isn't going to be able to manage that, I would happily go with Murphy right and Gordon left and bring Barnes on as an impact sub, because I believe he would have an impact. I thought Willock had no impact when he came on as a sub, but Barnes would have. But if Barnes could do it, I would start with Barnes and Gordon, because they both can score, you know. They're wide players, but they both can score.
Well, yeah, they score and they make goals as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Look,
yeah.
If possible,
so they're invaluable.
If possible, I would start with Barnes, but I don't know whether he'll be up. He'll certainly not be able to give us 90 minutes.
Yeah.
But he'll be able to give us, hopefully, enough. We've got to take the lead. You see, if, as Malcolm said, if we got a second goal against Everton and been 2-0 up when all the substitutions happened, we would have won still.
Yeah. Game all over.
We would have won still, but we didn't have that cushion. Now, if we haven't got the cushion down there, they'll make us pay for it later on.
Exactly. Yeah. Second goal is the most important goal of the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
and ironically, I thought we got it when Isak stuck that ball in for big Dan Burn. I thought we got it, and it was chalked off with VAR, you know, by the hairs on his legs.
Yes.
And big Dan Burn, I'm glad he's going to play centre half down there, because, and he must do, because of Lascelles and Botman, because he used to play for Fulham, didn't he? After he pushed the trolleys round Asda and turned out for Blythe Spartans and done little things like that, he played for Fulham, and so he's going home, and he'll captain the side down there as he did against Everton, and he'll have a good game because he'll play centre half. And he'll have a good game. If he played left back, I would have been absolutely terrified and been biting the pillow when I went to bed on Friday night.
Sure.
but luckily he's played centre half, and that's good, because he is going to his old club and he'll be captaining us, and I think he'll give us a performance in that position.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned earlier in the programme, John, that we've played Fulham twice now, and Fulham haven't been able to score.
Yeah, I know.
Really fill us with confidence to go out, do the job, do it properly, and it's all about sticking it in the Fulham net.
So, prediction from you, John, for this game?
Oh dear. I think we've got to win to make Europe, but I think it'll be a draw. We might have to win. We had to win against Everton to make Europe, but we didn't. I think it'll be a draw, which normally away from home against a team like Fulham would be a good result. Whether we can call it a good result in our present predicament is very much a different kettle of fish. But I think, like it or not, the best we can expect, not hope for, expect, is a draw.
Okay, Mal, what's your thoughts on this? Can Newcastle go and make it 3 wins out of 3 against Fulham this year, or are you siding more with John for a draw in this one?
No, I'm going to take Newcastle to get their hat-trick of wins and a further clean sheet. And
well, by Jove, there's a bold boy.
Yes,
I hope you're right, mate. There's a bold boy. Hat-trick of wins and a clean sheet. I mean, I can't remember the last clean sheet Newcastle had. I think it was when they had a day out at the laundry, wasn't it? I mean, I can't remember Newcastle getting clean sheets.
I'm going to go 2-0, John.
Good lad. That's what I like to hear.
2-1 to Newcastle. I'm going to go for a sneaky win as well. 2-1.
Right, I'm going to nail you two boys next week. Don't worry about that one. We'll come on here next week and probably have lost. So all 3 of us are wrong.
I saw this fixture for the first time in 1956 at Craven Cottage in the FA Cup.
And Jackie Milburn, was he playing?
Yeah.
And I tell you what, you've told me.
He crossed the ball for the late winner.
And I tell you what, the score won't be the same on Saturday, I would think, Malcolm. It was Fulham 4, Newcastle 5, wasn't
it? Yes, it was. Yeah.
Mind the way Newcastle played,
John. It was one of the most fascinating games you could ever have wished to see.
I would settle for that score again. In the way we play, letting in goals and scoring goals, it's probably got more chance than a 2-0.
Yeah. Never say never with Newcastle United.
Yeah, and John, it was a 2:00 kickoff midweek because it was a replay and there were no floodlights in those days. And midweek, the crowd was in excess of 40,000.
Wow!
You know, there must have been a lot of empty offices and factories that day.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that it's the same result. If not the same score, and I would settle for the same score. I mean, Newcastle letting 4 in away from home, but if the man is 5, that would even top the score against West Ham, wouldn't it?
Yes, wouldn't it just?
Yeah, it would do. Well, we will see whether our predictions are right. I am back tomorrow night, Friday night, 5:00 kickoff. The 3 amigos taking you into your Newcastle United weekend, and the lads will be back live next Thursday at 6 p.m. But for now, John, Malcolm, thanks for your time. Take care, guys.
All right. Enjoy your football, everyone.
Bye-bye, mate. Bye-bye.